The story begins in France, where a boy named Yang is being chased by a gang of men dressed in black suits. While fleeing, he accidentally collides with a girl named Mia, a brilliant student who also works part-time at a cafe. Despite the encounter, Yang manages to escape the gang, reaches a car, and drives away. Meanwhile, we learn that Mia is preparing to return to Korea, where her fiancé eagerly awaits her arrival for their upcoming wedding. Meanwhile, Yang's car is pursued and surrounded by several black cars, the same men who were chasing him earlier. A fight breaks out between them, but it eventually comes to an end when Yang makes the decision to surrender and go with them. Later, we see Mia boarding a plane. She asks the flight attendant to bring her the same drink as the passenger sitting next to her. However, she ends up drinking too much and loses control, behaving like a child and talking nonstop to Yang. Her antics disturb the entire plane full of passengers until they finally land in Korea. Mia apologizes to Yang for being drunk and acting childishly on the plane. She senses that he might have been kidnapped by the men in black and offers to help him. However, one of the men in black steps forward and clarifies, saying, "We are from Uo's group of companies, here to escort our vice president," while showing his business card. Meanwhile, Mia receives a call from her fiancé, who is already at the airport searching for her. At the same time, a girl named Li Wei, Yang's sister, arrives at the airport to pick him up. On the way back, Mia talks with Ji, but she notices that he seems distracted, secretly speaking with Li Wei, Yang's sister. It becomes apparent that the two are having an affair. When Mia confronts Ji about the call, he dismisses it, claiming it was work-related. Ji and Mia arrive at a local restaurant where Mia meets her father. It is later revealed that her father never married because he devoted his life to raising Mia, who had been adopted. What surprises Mia the most is learning that her father chose to adopt her despite knowing she had a heart condition. The father and daughter share a heartfelt reunion and spend some quality time together. Meanwhile, Yang reunites with his family, where tensions are evident due to the internal power struggles within their company. His sister Li Wei, who previously managed the company, is unhappy about Yang being appointed as vice president. Frustrated, she leaves the dinner table to secretly call Ji. At that moment, Ji is dining with Mia's family but lies to Li Wei, claiming he is having dinner with colleagues. Later that evening, Mia, along with her father, finishes moving into her new room. As they wrap up the task, she checks her email and notices a message from her professor. The email, written in French, contains a recommendation for her to apply for a job at a company in Korea. To her surprise and astonishment, the company is none other than the prestigious U's group of companies. As Mia and Yang begin unpacking their baggage, they both suddenly realize, at the same moment, that they have accidentally swapped their bags at the airport. Curiosity piqued, they start exploring each other's belongings, gradually uncovering a multitude of secrets about one another. As Yang flips through the contents of Mia's bag, he stumbles upon her personal diary. Intrigued, he reads a few passages. While unable to resist, he also snaps a photo of her bag and posts it on WeChat, unknowingly crossing a boundary. The next morning, Mia searches frantically for the card that Yang's bodyguard had given her, but it's nowhere to be found. She asks her father if he's seen it, but he denies knowing anything about the card. Mia is puzzled and frustrated, unaware that her father is the one who secretly tore the card into pieces the night before, hiding it from her. Mia's photo with Ji catches the attention of Li Wei, who, suspicious and eager to act, heads straight to Yang to acquire Mia's bag. Meanwhile, Mia, determined to get in touch with Yang, visits the U group of companies to inquire about his contact information. Coincidentally, Yang arrives at the office just as she's there. He takes her to his office, where they finally exchange their bags. Yang informs her that her bag is at his home and can be sent to her later. Back in the office, Li Wei, now in possession of Mia's bag, begins to sift through its contents. Upon reading Mia's diary, he becomes increasingly suspicious about her relationship with Ji, suspecting there may be something more to their connection. Meanwhile, the photo Mia posted quickly circulates among the office staff on WeChat, fueling gossip and curiosity. Unfazed by the rumors, Mia heads directly to Ji's office, bringing along a large assortment of snacks. There, she openly discusses her marriage plans with him, Unperturbed by the growing tension surrounding their relationship, Chen Zi informs Mia that he has an upcoming meeting, prompting her to leave his office. After she exits, Li Wei, who's been keeping an eye on the situation, meets with Chen Ji. He questions him about Mia, and Chen Zi, with a somewhat dismissive tone, explains that they both grew up in the same orphanage. He adds that Mia's behavior toward him is merely a result of sympathy, nothing more. Li Wei, however, is not convinced by Chen Ji's explanation. He becomes visibly frustrated and, in a pointed gesture, hands Chen Zi Mia's diary, urging him to take the matter more seriously. The weight of Li Wei's words seems to linger, as he insists that Chen Ji needs to consider the situation with greater care. As Ouyang was passing through a bustling food street, his attention was drawn to a large restaurant in front of Duru's father's establishment. Intrigued, he enters and is greeted by his friend, Li, who happens to be dining there. The two catch up while enjoying a hearty meal, exchanging a few casual words as they relax in the cozy atmosphere. At that moment, Mia walks into Duru's father's restaurant. She's there to lend a hand, stepping behind the counter to help with the day's work. As she busily goes about assisting in the kitchen, Ouyang's attention is drawn to her, his presence unnoticed by Mia as she focuses on her tasks. Mia, realizing she forgot to bring some onions for the kitchen, approaches Li to ask if he has any. It's there that she unexpectedly encounters Ouyang. As they briefly chat, Mia opens up about her baggage situation, and after some more discussion, she heads off to assist Duru's father in the restaurant. Meanwhile, Li, who has been observing the scene, casually mentions to Ouyang that the restaurant across the street is the oldest one in the area and that its owners are good, respectable people. Sometime later, Chen Ji arrives at the restaurant, holding Mia's bag in a small ring box. He walks over to Mia, and from a distance, Ouyang and Li watch, speculating that it might be a marriage proposal. However, to their surprise, Chen Ji opens the box not to reveal an engagement ring, but to ask Mia for a breakup. Mia is visibly stunned and tries to plead with him, but her efforts are in vain as Chen Zi remains firm in his decision. Ace Mayer runs after Chen Zi, trying desperately to stop him. She trips and falls onto the road. Luckily, Ouyang is nearby and rushes to her aid, along with his companion Shi. Concerned for her well-being and noting her disorientation, they decide to take her to Ouyang's boxing gym to help her recover. Once there, Mia drinks more than she should, and the alcohol begins to take its toll. Her behavior becomes erratic, and she starts acting unusually, much to the concern of Ouyang and Shi. Meanwhile, back at Li Wei's home, he meets with his father to discuss their family business. The conversation shifts to a more serious tone when Ouyang unexpectedly joins them, bringing new insights into the ongoing discussions. During this meeting, Ouyang learns that the U Group has been experiencing a significant loss in its makeup branding sector. In response, Ouyang suggests a bold move, closing the physical makeup stores and shifting focus entirely to online sales, where the market is growing. Their father, impressed with the proposal, assigns them the task of creating a comprehensive business plan for the online store strategy, giving them a joint responsibility to navigate the next steps for the company's future. Mia wakes up in a luxurious hotel room, slightly disoriented, only to find Li waiting for her. He instructs her to get dressed and come downstairs, where they will head out together. Li's tone is matter-of-fact, suggesting they have something important to do. At the U Group of companies, Ouyang takes a more direct approach with his business dealings. He sends an office staff member to request a meeting with Mr. Chen Ji. When the two sit down together, Ouyang casually asks Chen Ji to bring him all the reports related to the makeup brands and stores in second-tier cities, including performance evaluations and the reasoning behind shutting them down. Before diving into the business matters, however, Ouyang brings up the topic of Chen Zi's breakup with Mia. Chen Ji, clearly uncomfortable, politely declines to discuss the matter, citing it as a personal issue. He quickly shifts the focus back to business, asking for permission to leave, which Ouyang grants without pressing further. Meanwhile, Li drives Mia to the U Group of companies. As they pull up, Mia steps out of the car and unexpectedly runs into Chen Zi. The encounter is tense, as both parties are still reeling from the emotional upheaval of the previous day. Mia, determined to make sense of her breakup with Chen Zi, tries to approach him again at the U group of companies. She desperately attempts to persuade him to reconsider, but all her efforts are in vain. Feeling a mix of frustration and sorrow, she begins to leave the building. As she walks out, she unexpectedly runs into Wei Yang. Sensing the tension in the air, Mia quickly reassures him, telling him not to think badly of Chen Zi. She insists that he is, in fact, a good person and a valuable asset to the company, acknowledging his strong work ethic. At that moment, Li Wei and other staff members from the company, who have been gathered around Chen Zi's office, overhear the conversation. Mia, realizing that her words have inadvertently drawn attention, quickly rushes away, trying to escape the growing awkwardness of the situation. As Mia hurries out, the focus shifts to Mr. Li and Lao Wei. In a surprisingly candid moment, it's revealed that the two have been in an arranged relationship, orchestrated by their families. This new piece of information adds another layer of complexity to the dynamics at play within the company. Later that evening, Mr. Li and Li Wei sat at the dinner table with their families discussing the topic of marriage. During the conversation, Mr. Li interrupted and stated that they should not use their families as tools for joining them together. He explained that he had always viewed Li Wei as a sister, and Li Wei echoed the same sentiment. This revelation left everyone at the table in shock. Meanwhile, Yang was working in his office when his father came to visit after his appointment with the doctor. It was during this visit that his father shared the devastating news he had been diagnosed with a terminal illness and had only 1 to 2 years left to live. They exchanged a few words before his father left the office. Later, Mia was waiting in the garage to speak with Chen Jie once again, hoping to persuade him. However, as she approached him, he was suddenly kidnapped by a gang. Yang, who was also leaving his office, witnessed the entire event. During the interrogation, the kidnappers demanded money and referred to Mia as Duruo. Just as things were escalating, Yang arrived with his bodyguard. A fight broke out, and the chaos eventually led them to the police station. There, the police informed Yang that the criminals were searching for a girl named Dunuo who resembled Mia closely. Li Wei sat with Chen Zi, clearly upset about their awkward encounter regarding the marriage proposal earlier that night. In an attempt to ease the tension, Li Wei suggested that they leave together and start fresh in another part of the city. Just as they were discussing their plans, Chen Zi received a call from Mia's father, informing him that Mia had been kidnapped. He quickly excused himself from the conversation with Li Wei and rushed to the hospital to check on Mia. At the hospital, their conversation was brief and awkward as the situation weighed heavily on them both. After a short while, Chen Ji left to go home, where Li Wei was waiting for him. Meanwhile, Mia's father sat alone, lost in thought. He couldn't help but reminisce about his long-lost twin daughter, Duruo, who had disappeared years ago. He recalled how Duruo had caused a great deal of debt, particularly when she had borrowed money to help her sister Mia with her medical bills, as Mia had been suffering from a heart condition. Li Wei was sitting in her office when she received a call informing her that Yang had used his power as the director of a group to fire Chen Zi. Feeling the urgency of the situation, Li Wei decided to request an official meeting with the higher authorities of the company. During the meeting, most of the managers voiced their support for Chen Zi, arguing that under his leadership, the company had seen an increase in sales. Meanwhile, Yang struggled to provide any solid reasoning for his decision to dismiss Chen Zi. As a result, the meeting ended without a clear resolution. In the office, Chen Zi spoke with Li Wei, urging her to take action against Yang. He claimed that Yang was actively working against her position and undermining her authority. Chen Zi also revealed that he was on a personal mission to remove all the men who had been appointed by her, with the aim of weakening her influence in the company and making it more vulnerable to his control. Meanwhile, at the police station, a detainee was being transferred to a new cell. As soon as she arrived, the other prisoners began harassing her. During the altercation, another girl suddenly intervened and fought back against the harassers. She appeared strikingly similar to Mia, though her name was revealed to be Duruo. It was clear that she had been incarcerated for a long time, but she was set to be released from the cell the following day. At our group, Ouyang brought Mia to the office and introduced her to the staff as his personal secretary and the newly appointed manager of the planning department. Mia spoke softly at first, but Ouyang quickly advised her to be more assertive, especially when attending upcoming meetings with the marketing, purchasing, and finance departments. Taking his advice to heart, Mia adopted a more authoritative tone as she interacted with the department heads. Ouyang then mentioned that the only department left to visit was the sales department, which was under the leadership of Chen Zi. Initially, Mia was reluctant to go, but Ouyang once again urged her to maintain her authority as the new manager of the planning department, emphasizing that her role was no joke. Together, they visited the sales department, where Ouyang introduced her to the staff. The atmosphere turned awkward when Chen Zi emerged from his office. As soon as Chen Zi saw Mia, the tension was palpable. Both he and Mia locked eyes, and for a brief moment they held hands, but Mia suddenly pulled away and ran out of the department, leaving everyone in stunned silence. Meanwhile, Duruo was released from her cell and, accompanied by a man, made her way to the hospital in a tuk to visit her mother, who was in poor health. When they arrived at the hospital, they were shocked to find her mother's bed empty. In a state of panic, Duru ran through the hospital, searching desperately for her. She eventually found her mother in a nearby park, where her mother, in a mentally unstable condition, was engaging in strange behavior. Ouyang was casually playing when he received an urgent call from his sister, asking him to come to her office immediately. He quickly made his way to her office, where she handed him a file and asked, "Why did you hire a new secretary?" Li Wei then suggested that he fire her, but Ouyang tried to argue, defending his decision. The conversation quickly escalated into family matters. Li Wei interrupted him, asserting her authority and ordering him, as president, to do what she said. However, Ouyang calmly responded that she hadn't broken any rules, using the same tactics she had employed when he had fired Chen Ji. With that, he left the room. After the meeting, Ouyang returned to his office, only to be greeted by Mr. Li's sister, who seemed particularly interested in him. Despite her attention, Ouyang tried his best to avoid her advances. Later, Ouyang took Mr. Li's sister to Mr. Li's hotel, where they found Mr. Li and Mia already seated at a coffee table, engaged in conversation. Ouyang explained to Mr. Li that his sister's recent behavior had been concerning, leading to a scolding from her older brother. The situation was tense, but Mr. Li appreciated the heads-up. Meanwhile, in a different setting, Li Wei and Chen Ji were having a conversation over dinner. They made plans to humiliate Ouyang and the newly appointed manager, Mia. Their scheme involved spreading false rumors about Mia being a gold digger and sabotaging the next business proposal by giving it to the planning department, hoping to see them fail. This would give Li Wei the opportunity to take full control of the company. Li Wei showed Mr. O the company's security footage, which captured Mia fighting in the office environment. Disturbed by what he saw, Mr. O immediately called for Ouyang, and the two of them discussed Mia's behavior. Mr. Wu expressed his disappointment in his son for hiring her as both secretary and the manager of the planning department. Despite Ouyang's attempts to defend his decision, the conversation did not go well, and his father's frustration was evident. Meanwhile, Mia was working diligently in her office when Mr. Ao, the chairman of the company, paid her a personal visit to assess her abilities. After some conversation, he invited her to his office and made her an offer 6 months' salary in advance if she resigned and left both the company and Ouyang. Mia, however, refused the offer without hesitation. She defended Ouyang, calling him a genius, and requested more time to prove herself in the role, standing her ground firmly. During a directors and managers meeting led by President Li Wei, the discussion centered around the company's finances. Suddenly, the chairman entered the room with Mia, interrupting the meeting. He issued a stern warning, cautioning everyone against spreading any rumors about Mia before officially joining the meeting. Once the disruption subsided, the meeting resumed. Li Wei took the floor and began discussing the upcoming product launch. He then handed full responsibility for the second-half publicity plan for the launch to Director Ouyang. Ouyang agreed to take on the task, leaving Mia visibly worried about her position and the challenges ahead. Jiru was at the hospital with her mother when her male friend arrived and told her about a girl who resembled her, mentioning that she worked at a group of companies. When Jiru heard the name Maya, her mother suddenly lost control, reacting with strange and erratic behavior, clearly disturbed by the mention of the name. During the meeting for the upcoming product launch, Ouyang asked the team to provide all the necessary details. However, it soon became clear that the cost of vendors was higher than expected. Ouyang instructed his team member to request at least a 30% discount from the vendors. The team member, however, refused, explaining that this matter had always been handled by the manager, Ms. Liu, and suggested that Ouyang approach her for further negotiation. Ouyang went to Ms. Liu with the hope of negotiating a 30% discount from the vendors to help reduce costs for the project. However, Ms. Liu explained that such a discount wasn't feasible. Realizing that the budget allocated for the product launch was inadequate, Ouyang decided to seek further assistance from Li Wei. Upon arriving at Li Wei's office, he found Chen Zi and Li Wei deep in conversation. There was an awkward pause as Ouyang entered, but he quickly gathered himself and made his request for an increased budget. Li Wei, however, declined his appeal, explaining that she couldn't approve additional funds due to the company's need to allocate resources to other pressing priorities. Frustrated and feeling the weight of his challenges, Ouyang left her office, his mind racing with concerns about how to move forward. Later that night, the pressure continued to mount. Ouyang's team worked relentlessly, but exhaustion began to take its toll. Tired and stressed, team members started voicing their frustrations, mentioning missed personal commitments, such as appointments with the Chaponais friends. As the tension in the room grew, Ouyang entered and immediately recognized the strain his team was under. With a sigh, he called an end to the meeting, acknowledging how worn out everyone was and giving them the break they desperately needed. Ouyang walked into the office and immediately noticed that the entire team was staring at him, their eyes full of anticipation. His curiosity piqued. He raised an eyebrow and asked, "What's going on here?" Mia, who had been lost in thought along with the rest of the team, stepped forward to address him. With a serious expression, she began, "We've been working on a solution to the challenges we've been facing. It's not easy, but we believe it might be the answer." She paused for a moment, glancing around at the others before continuing, "It's going to take a lot of effort, but we're all ready to give it our best shot." Her suggestion was bold yet intriguing. What if we plan a single show that features lingerie, cosmetics, and swimsuits all in one? She proposed. This unconventional idea, though surprising at first, had its merits. It was not only cost-effective but also offered a streamlined approach, allowing them to showcase all their product lines in a single, unified event. The idea promised to increase efficiency and elevate their marketing efforts, making it a potential game changer for the brand. However, there was one significant challenge. It would require a complete overhaul of the designs and background palettes to make the concept work seamlessly. The team gathered in a spacious conference room to discuss the logistics, carefully considering both the potential advantages and drawbacks of such a bold and unconventional move. Each member of the team brought their own unique perspective to the table, weighing the risks and rewards with great attention to detail. After a thorough and spirited deliberation, with ideas bouncing around and multiple viewpoints explored, they all arrived at a unanimous decision to embrace Mia's bold and visionary proposal. While the challenge ahead was undoubtedly considerable and filled with uncertainties, the excitement in the room was palpable. There was an undeniable sense of possibility in the air as they realized the potential to achieve something truly remarkable. The task was indeed formidable, requiring effort, dedication, and collaboration, but everyone was energized by the sheer prospect of creating something that could leave a lasting and transformative impact. With a renewed sense of purpose and determination, they didn't waste any time. They immediately rolled up their sleeves, diving headfirst into the planning and execution, working tirelessly to bring Mia's vision to life and to make it a reality. In the bustling office, a crucial and high-stakes meeting was convened with all the managers, directors, and key decision-makers to finalize the intricate details of the upcoming product launch. The room was filled with anticipation as Ouyang, with his usual confidence and poise, presented the comprehensive and meticulously crafted plan. He had thoughtfully divided the strategy into three distinct categories: basic, public, and luxury. This tiered approach was not just a marketing tactic, but a strategic effort to ensure that the brand would be accessible to buyers from all walks of life, regardless of their socioeconomic background. By catering to different segments, the launch would be both inclusive and appealing, expanding its reach and resonance with a broader, more diverse audience. His proposal was met with resounding approval and excitement from everyone present, with many in the room openly applauding his foresight and innovative thinking. The meeting ended on a highly positive note, with the entire team fully aligned and energized, eagerly anticipating the next steps. Meanwhile, the product development department, under the combined supervision of Aoyang and Mia, was working around the clock to prepare for the highly anticipated product launch event. The team visited a number of potential venues, carefully scrutinizing each location for its suitability. They were looking for a space that not only reflected the brand's image but also met the logistical demands of an event of such magnitude. The pressure was undoubtedly mounting as the clock ticked closer to the launch date, but despite the mounting stress, the team remained steadfast in their commitment. They were determined to ensure that the launch would go off without a hitch and make a lasting impression on everyone in attendance. Elsewhere, Mia's father, a man who had always been deeply supportive of his daughter's career, was eager to check in on her progress. Perhaps he also wanted to surprise her with lunch, knowing how hard she had been working. As he entered the building and made his way to the front desk, the receptionist, with a warm smile, greeted him. However, when he inquired about the whereabouts of the product development department, she informed him that they were not in the office at the moment. But as soon as she mentioned Mia's name, the receptionist's demeanor shifted. Her tone became more respectful, and she looked at Mia's father with a newfound recognition. "Ms. Mia is not just a regular staff member," she said, her voice filled with respect. "She is the executive secretary to Director Aoyang." The revelation took Mia's father completely by surprise. He had always been proud of his daughter, but he hadn't realized the full extent of her achievements within the company. His initial reaction was one of shock as he stood there, momentarily stunned. It was clear that Mia had risen far beyond his expectations and had established herself as an indispensable part of the company's leadership team. He silently marveled at how much his daughter had accomplished, and for the first time he truly understood the depth of her influence and the high regard in which she was held by her colleagues. Aoyang returned home that evening, his hand carefully wrapped in a bandage, a visible reminder of the minor fracture he had sustained during his boxing practice. As he entered the house, he was immediately met with the stern gaze of his father, who stood with his arms crossed, visibly frustrated and filled with anger. His father's voice was sharp as he demanded to know how Aoyang could spend his day in the boxing ring when the critical product launch date was rapidly approaching, just days away. The tension in the room thickened as Aoyang struggled to find the right words to explain himself. He could feel the weight of his father's disapproval, a man who had always valued focus and discipline, especially in moments of such immense importance. The disappointment in his father's eyes was unmistakable. He believed his son's priorities were out of place, and the urgency of the situation made it even more difficult for him to understand why Aoyang had taken such a risk with his physical well-being. The next morning, Aoyang, determined not to let his injury derail the project, called for an executive meeting. He was ready to move forward with the plans, undeterred by the challenges ahead. As he prepared to enter the meeting room, however, the chairman, his father, took a decisive step. He walked in ahead of Aoyang and made an announcement that would change everything. He informed Aoyang that, effective immediately, he would no longer be in charge of the product launch event. His injury was cited as the main reason, with the chairman arguing that his physical condition would prevent him from effectively overseeing such an important event. The room was filled with an uneasy silence as the impact of this decision sank in, and Aoyang's heart sank with it. The sudden shift felt like a personal blow, but he knew his father's decision came from a place of concern. Lai Wei, ever the sharp and strategic thinker, quickly intervened. She stepped forward to defend Aoyang, arguing passionately that replacing him at such a late stage would only cause unnecessary delays. A new leader would need time to familiarize themselves with the intricate plans that had already been set in motion, and this could jeopardize the entire project. Her words were logical and well argued, but despite her protests, the chairman remained firm in his decision. His focus was on Aoyang's recovery and well-being, insisting that his son needed to rest and step back from managing the event to avoid further complications. The tension in the room was palpable, as each person waited for Aoyang's response. At that moment, the door to the meeting room swung open, and Aoyang strode in, his presence immediately commanding attention. His confidence was palpable as he walked toward the table, and without a word, he rolled up his sleeve to reveal that his hand had nearly fully healed. The bandage was now merely a formality, as the injury that had been the center of so much debate appeared to be a thing of the past. The room fell silent, every eye on Aoyang as he stood tall, unwavering in his resolve. He had defied the chairman's concerns, showing that he was physically capable of taking charge of the event. The chairman, still skeptical but now visibly reconsidering, scrutinized his son carefully before asking, "Are you truly willing to take full responsibility for the event, despite your injury?" Aoyang met his father's gaze with unshakable determination. His voice was firm and resolute as he answered without hesitation. "If the product launch fails," he said, his words carrying the weight of a man who understood the stakes, "I will leave the company for good." His statement was more than just a promise, it was an ultimatum, a declaration that he was fully committed to the success of the event, willing to risk everything including his future at the company if the launch did not succeed. His words echoed in the room, leaving no room for doubt about his resolve. After the meeting, the air in the office remained thick with the weight of Aoyang's bold declaration. Later that day, he found himself in a private conversation with his father, the man who had always guided him, yet now seemed to be standing at a crossroads with his son. The chairman's pride in his son's determination was clear, but so was his deep disappointment. His voice, tinged with sadness, broke the silence. "You didn't need to prove anything, Aoyang," he said softly. "I've always intended for you to take over as chairman. This was never about testing your limits or pushing you to the edge." Aoyang listened quietly, but his resolve remained unshaken. His father's words, though filled with care, made him realize how different their perspectives on leadership truly were. His father, in his years of experience, had hoped that Aoyang would take a more measured and balanced approach to leadership. "I had hoped you would find a more balanced approach to leadership," he confessed, a hint of regret in his tone. "There's more to leadership than risking it all. Sometimes the true test is knowing when to hold back, not when to go all in." The conversation hung heavy between them, and for a moment, both father and son reflected on the differing paths they had envisioned for Aoyang's future. Though they both shared the same goal, ensuring the company's success, their approaches to leadership and their understanding of what it meant to lead were worlds apart. During a critical meeting regarding the product launch event, the planning department found themselves in an increasingly difficult situation. A key partner unexpectedly canceled their agreement, causing a significant financial shortfall and threatening the stability of the entire event. Tensions ran high as the team scrambled to find a solution to the emerging crisis. In a moment of frustration, Aoyang suggested that he could cover the shortfall using his own personal funds. His offer, while seemingly noble, angered Mia. She felt that this wasn't a real solution to the problem, but rather an attempt to sidestep the deeper issues at play. Mia believed that simply throwing money at the situation wouldn't resolve the underlying complications and that a more strategic approach was needed. Frustrated by his suggestion, she left the meeting in haste, determined to speak with Mims, Liu, who was responsible for maintaining relationships with the event's partners. However, when Mia arrived at Ms. Liu's office, the conversation quickly descended into a no-win situation. Ms. Liu was interrupted by an urgent phone call during their discussion, and Mia, feeling the pressure of time, decided to step out and wait for her to finish. As she waited outside, Mia overheard fragments of Ms. Liu's conversation, and it became clear that she was struggling with personal issues, particularly concerning her recent divorce. This emotional distraction seemed to be affecting Ms. Liu's ability to focus on her work, and made the situation all the more complicated. Mia, now more frustrated than ever, recognized that this was just another factor hindering their efforts in securing the necessary partnerships for the event. Later that evening, Mia invited Ms. Liu to her restaurant, hoping to have a more focused discussion away from the office. It was there that Mia, finally speaking candidly, revealed the truth, Someone had been pressuring their partners to cancel their agreements with a group of companies. The source of this sabotage was none other than Li Wei. The revelation shocked Ms. Liu, who had no idea that their problems went far deeper than just logistical challenges. Meanwhile, Li Wei had just finished a long, stressful day. As she made her way to the parking lot, she stumbled unexpectedly, momentarily losing her balance before quickly catching herself. Unbeknownst to her, a man who had been watching from a distance picked up her fallen lipstick. Later, as he sat down to eat, he was confronted by Chen Ji, who asked in a tense voice why he had Li Wei's lipstick in his possession. The situation became even more complicated when it was revealed that the man was, in fact, Li Wei's real father before her mother had married the chairman of a group. This surprising revelation added a new layer of intrigue to the already complex web of personal and professional conflicts surrounding Li Wei. In a separate conversation, Li Wei received a call from the president of the event company, who offered an apology and informed her that they could no longer cooperate. The reason, he explained, was that the planning department at our group had secured the venue, leaving Li Wei with no options. He made it clear that they would either have to provide the venue themselves or refund the money, leaving her with little leverage to salvage the situation. The call left Li Wei feeling frustrated and cornered, but she knew she had to act quickly to turn things around. Later that day, Li Wei met with Chen Ji, where they discussed their next steps. The conversation was filled with tension as they planned their strategy to further damage Wu Yang's reputation and bring his product launch efforts to a screeching halt. They knew that undermining the event and its success was their only way of maintaining control over the situation. Back at the planning department, the financial issue had been resolved after Wu Yang had secured the necessary funds. However, a new, even more pressing problem emerged. The search for a venue had become a top priority, and securing one within a day seemed impossible. With the clock ticking, Wu Yang took Mia with him to visit all the potential venues around the city. However, they were met with disappointment at every turn. All the venues they visited were already fully booked, leaving them with no options. When Wu Yang asked the staff who had reserved the spaces, they refused to provide any information about the clients who had made the bookings. That night, during a meeting with the team, Mia voiced her growing concerns to Wu Yang. She suspected that someone within their own team was leaking information, which had led to the disastrous situation with the venue bookings. The realization that there might be a traitor in their midst only added to the mounting pressure they were already facing. The thought that someone from within their own ranks might be sabotaging their efforts was deeply unsettling, and it fueled Mia's determination to get to the bottom of the situation. As the pressure mounted and the stakes grew higher, the team found themselves on the brink of unraveling, unsure of who they could trust and how they would salvage the product launch from the brink of failure. Mia, feeling a wave of frustration and betrayal, couldn't hold back any longer. With her emotions running high, she confronted Wu Yang directly, revealing the shocking truth. She told him that the previous convention center had been on the verge of refunding their deposit when his sister Li Wei had intervened at the last moment, stopping them from doing so. Mia, piecing together the puzzle, pointed out that Li Wei was the only one who had access to their files, which had allowed her to see that the financial issue had been resolved. Yet, right after that, a new problem had suddenly emerged, one that had put the entire event in jeopardy. She laid out her suspicions, accusing Wu Yang's sister of orchestrating the chaos, intentionally creating complications to derail the product launch. Mia's words hung heavy in the air, her frustration palpable. Wu Yang, however, was quick to dismiss Mia's accusations. He refused to entertain the idea that his sister, whom he trusted implicitly, could be involved in such underhanded schemes. His face hardened, and he rejected the notion that Li Wei would intentionally sabotage their efforts, chalking it up to nothing more than Mia's assumptions and speculations. Wu Yang, ever the loyal brother, struggled to reconcile his sister's possible involvement with his unwavering belief in her integrity. The two of them locked eyes for a moment, the tension thick, but Wu Yang stubbornly clung to the idea that Li Wei could not be behind the setbacks. Meanwhile, that same night, an entirely different conversation was unfolding. In a discreet and secretive meeting, Chen Ji sat across from Li Wei's real father. The air was tense as their words exchanged in hushed tones. As the conversation unfolded, It became clear that the entire situation had been part of a carefully orchestrated scheme. Lai Wei's father, leveraging his considerable influence, had taken proactive steps to book all the available venues in the city center, securing them for himself. This strategic move left U Group with no viable options for the product launch, cornering them into a nearly impossible position. The realization that the crisis had been deliberately engineered to put Wu Yang's team at a disadvantage sent a chill down the spine of anyone involved in the situation. It was a masterful move of corporate maneuvering, one designed to cause maximum disruption at the most crucial time. At the same time, the focus shifted to the grand inauguration of Mr. Li's new luxury hotel complex. The event marked a monumental milestone in the hospitality industry, showcasing an impressive collection of high-end hotels, 2 Japanese hotels, 1 French hotel, 3 Chinese hotels, and several other prestigious establishments. The complex was strategically situated in the heart of the city, adding another jewel to the Marriott Hotels collection. The grand opening drew significant attention, further cementing Mr. Li's position as a powerful and influential figure in the industry. The event was a resounding success, but the satisfaction of his achievement was tempered by the behind-the-scenes maneuvering that continued to unfold against U Group. Back at the planning department, the air was thick with tension. Ouyang, undeterred by the mounting challenges, made a bold and controversial decision. Despite the venue being far from fully prepared, he insisted on hosting the upcoming product launch at the Universal Convention Center. Mia, ever the pragmatist, was deeply concerned about the venue's lack of readiness and the logistical hurdles that would need to be overcome. She voiced her strong objections, worried about the risks involved in such a hasty decision. But Ouyang, resolute in his confidence, dismissed her concerns outright. He refused to reconsider, and an unexpected move ended the meeting abruptly, leaving the issue unresolved. The room was left in a heavy silence, the tension lingering long after the meeting had concluded. Immediately after the meeting, a key member of the planning department left the office and made her way to a nearby cafe. There, she met with Li Wei, who had been waiting for her. The 2 women exchanged a covert conversation, speaking in hushed tones as they discussed the details of the meeting. The planning department member, eager to secure her future, shared the information from the meeting, divulging the critical decisions that had been made. In return, Li Wei, ever the strategist, promised the woman a lucrative position at the company's UK branch. The promise of a high-paying job was enough to secure the deal, and with it the woman's allegiance to Li Wei. The conversation ended with the exchange of a firm handshake, sealing the arrangement. Li Wei had once again found a way to manipulate the situation to her advantage, securing both her position and a foothold in a new, powerful opportunity. The web of deception was growing ever more intricate, and Ouyang's plans seemed to be slipping further and further out of his control. Ouyang walked into Li Wei's office with a sense of determination, carrying the final copy of the product launch event planning. He needed to ensure that everything was in order, but also he had a more personal matter to address. As he placed the document on her desk, he looked her in the eye, his tone measured but firm. Li Wei, he began, I know you're doing everything you can to assert your influence, but I need to warn you, if you continue with your actions, they will cause serious damage. Not just to me, but to the entire company. His words were careful, yet heavy with the weight of his concerns. Li Wei, however, didn't take kindly to the warning. She looked at him with an air of indifference, barely pausing before she retorted sharply. You're just trying to cover up your own incompetence, Ouyang, she sneered. You're too lazy to handle things yourself, and now you want to blame me for your failures. It's always someone else's fault when things go wrong, isn't it? Her words stung, cutting deeper than Ouyang anticipated. It was as though she knew exactly where to strike, and her accusations hit their mark. With a tight-lipped expression and no further response, Ouyang turned and left her office, his mind racing with both frustration and disbelief. Her dismissal of his concerns felt like a slap in the face, but he knew he couldn't let it distract him. Later that day, Ouyang called Mia to handle the delivery of the vouchers for the event. She was to pick them up from the firm and take them directly to the event site. When Mia arrived at the firm, she was met with the sight of the vouchers, ready for transport. She quickly instructed the team to load the van, eager to get the materials to the venue on time. But something wasn't right. As Mia took a closer look at the vouchers, her heart sank. The vouchers had been printed in an entirely different format than the original ones they had received. The layout was wrong, and the details on each voucher seemed to be mismatched. Her mind raced as she examined the vouchers further, her suspicions mounting. These weren't the vouchers they had finalized. Something was off, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Mia immediately approached the staff and asked for an explanation. The team insisted, almost too confidently, that the vouchers had been printed after confirming all the details twice with U Group. The assurance in their voices only deepened her unease. She knew that this wasn't a mistake that could simply be brushed off, and it didn't take long for her to realize that the situation was starting to spiral out of control. With a sinking feeling, Mia called Yang to inform him of the discrepancy. The moment she spoke, she could hear the frustration in his voice as he processed the news. He had already been dealing with so many problems, and now this. He couldn't afford to let this mistake derail their carefully laid plans. Yang immediately instructed her to investigate further, but he knew they didn't have the luxury of time. The event was too close, and any delay at this stage could be catastrophic. As Mia worked to resolve the issue, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of unease. It was clear that someone was trying to undermine their efforts, but who? And why? With every new complication, the pressure mounted. The stakes had never been higher, and the game being played seemed far more complex than she had initially imagined. The feeling that there was a traitor in their midst grew stronger, and she knew that she couldn't trust anyone, least of all Li Wei, whose involvement in the earlier setbacks now seemed even more suspicious. Mia was determined to get to the bottom of this, but time was running out, and every step forward seemed to come with a new set of challenges. Frustrated and disheartened, Mia sat on the side of the road, feeling like all hope was lost. Her heart heavy with despair, she couldn't help but wonder if everything she had worked for had been in vain. Just then, Yang appeared out of nowhere, offering her a ride. He saw her in her vulnerable state and, without hesitation, offered to take her with him. As they drove, Mia opened up to him, pouring out her troubles and explaining the situation she was facing. However, as she spoke, Yang remained strangely indifferent, his face unreadable, as though her concerns were of little importance to him. This lack of empathy only added to her frustration, but she kept her composure, hoping that at least some clarity would come from this unexpected encounter. They eventually arrived at Mr. Lai's hotel, and Mia, drained and disillusioned, turned to Yang and declared that she wasn't hungry. Her voice lacked the usual spark of energy. She simply felt too defeated to care. However, Yang's insistence was unwavering, and despite her reluctance, he encouraged her to join him for dinner. As they stepped into the hotel compound, Mia was caught off guard by what she saw. The venue for the product launch was not just set up, but it was prepared in a way that far exceeded her expectations. The arrangements were even better than she had imagined, and the realization washed over her like a wave of emotion. Mia was so overwhelmed that she couldn't hold back the tears that began to spill from her eyes, tears of joy and gratitude. They all sat down for dinner, and it was during this meal that the truth came out. Every detail of the event had been carefully planned in advance. What Mia thought was a crisis had actually been a meticulously orchestrated surprise. Later, back at the company, Yang and Mia were talking and laughing together when Li Wei suddenly walked in, interrupting their conversation with a serious look on his face. He requested a private conversation with Yang, but Yang, determined to stand his ground, insisted that they talk openly in front of Mia. Li Wei immediately took issue with the sudden change of venue. He pointed out that the Li Group's name appeared prominently on the event banner and questioned the decision to use the No. 1 hall at the Universal Convention Center. His voice was filled with skepticism. Yang, ever composed, responded calmly but firmly, telling Li Wei that there was no need to explain every detail, as the changes had been made out of necessity and urgency. However, when Li Wei brought up the No. 1 hall, Yang's demeanor shifted and his tone grew sharper. "How do you know about that?" he asked, a hint of suspicion in his voice. What followed was a surprising revelation. Yang had orchestrated the situation deliberately. He had instructed every staff member to provide a different hall number in an effort to identify the mole within their organization. The tension between the siblings quickly escalated as their voices grew louder. Sensing the argument was escalating, Mia, feeling the weight of the moment, quickly ducked beneath the table to avoid being caught in the middle of their heated exchange. Yang, calm but unwavering, then handed Li Wei an envelope containing a photograph of Chen Ji. "I've done my investigation," he said, his voice carrying the weight of the truth. "Only one person is responsible for the fake bookings of all the venues, and that falls under illegal activities." Li Wei's face darkened with fury. His jaw clenched as he glared at Yang, demanding to know what he wanted in return. Yang, without hesitation, laid down his terms that the Li Group would agree to be a co-organizer for the event. Li Wei, clearly enraged but recognizing that he had no other choice, reluctantly agreed. With a sharp intake of breath, he stormed out of the room, leaving Yang and Manga to process the fallout of their unexpected victory. At a dimly lit restaurant, Chen Ji sat across from Li Wei's father, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows on their faces. The atmosphere was heavy with unspoken intentions. Chen Ji slid a photograph across the table toward Li Wei's father, his tone calm but persuasive as he laid out his final request. "Just one last favor," Chen Ji began, his voice low and purposeful. "If the upcoming product launch event succeeds, Yang will be appointed chairman, and your daughter, Li Wei, will lose her position as president of the Group of companies. This is a turning point, a chance to secure your family's future and shift the balance of power." Li Wei's father studied the photograph in his hands, the weight of the moment pressing on him. His fingers tightened around the edges of the paper as he absorbed the implications of Chen Ji's words. It was a calculated move, one that would change everything. After a long silence, Li Wei's father finally spoke, his voice steady but tinged with reluctance. "All right, I'll do it." The deal was sealed, though both men knew that the consequences of their actions would be far-reaching. Later that night, Yang was driving Mia's friend, Xiu, home. As they made their way through the quiet streets, the car's interior was filled with a subtle tension. Xiu, who had always been a good friend of Mia's, found herself unusually nervous. The past few weeks had seen her and Yang growing closer, their brief but meaningful interactions leaving an impression on her heart. She glanced at Yang, his focused gaze on the road ahead, and felt her pulse quicken. Over the course of their time together, his small gestures of kindness had started to chip away at the wall she had built around herself. His calm demeanor, his occasional words of encouragement, it was all beginning to affect her more than she had anticipated. She shifted in her seat, her voice a little softer as she spoke. "I never thought someone like you would be so considerate," she said, her eyes lingering on him for a moment longer than necessary. "It's nice." Yang, seemingly unaware of the weight behind her words, offered her a polite smile, his eyes glancing briefly at the rearview mirror. "I'm just doing what I can." "It's nothing really," he said, his tone modest, though his sincerity was evident. Xiu couldn't help but feel a flutter in her chest at his response. She had known Yang as a professional, but lately his kindness and attention had begun to awaken feelings she hadn't expected. The conversation drifted into silence, but the unspoken connection between them remained, a subtle but undeniable shift in their dynamic. The next morning, as the preparations for the product launch event were in full swing, Mia was running around, checking every detail. The atmosphere was electric, but her mind was preoccupied with one issue. Andy, the chief makeup artist, had been unreachable for hours, and she was growing more concerned by the minute. Her attempts to contact him had been unsuccessful, and with the event approaching, she knew time was running out. She found Yang and explained the situation, her worry evident in her voice. "I don't know where Andy is, and the event is about to start. I can't afford to have a makeup artist missing when everything's at stake." Yang, ever the problem solver, listened carefully before responding. "You'll have to take charge of this. If Andy's not available, we need to move quickly. What's the plan?" Without hesitation, Mia made a decision. She would step into Andy's role herself. But she knew she couldn't do it alone, so she took a bold step. She visited Andy's girlfriend, a woman with a background in chemistry and a deep understanding of cosmetics, hoping she could step in and save the day. When Mia explained the situation, Andy's girlfriend was hesitant at first but agreed when she realized how important the event was. "I'll help. I know the basics of makeup, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this work," she said, her determination evident. With Andy's girlfriend on board, the day of the event finally arrived. The venue was buzzing with energy as a large crowd of businessmen, influential figures, and guests filled the space. Among them were the board members of O Group of companies, all eager to see the results of the much-anticipated product launch. The fashion show kicked off with great fanfare. The audience was treated to an exciting range of presentations, from the sultry lingerie segment that had the crowd captivated to a more whimsical kids' fashion segment that brought lighthearted joy to the room. The variety kept the energy high, with each segment introducing something new and engaging. Later, the show took a more artistic turn, focusing on the fusion of makeup artistry and clothing design. Andy's girlfriend, who had quickly taken over her boyfriend's role, oversaw this segment with precision and flair. The combination of flawless makeup and beautiful outfits created a stunning visual effect, leaving the audience mesmerized. It was a perfect blend of skillful artistry and elegance, and the crowd responded with enthusiastic applause. The event was a success, every detail falling into place as Miao Ouyang and their team worked together to ensure everything went smoothly. The evening marked a turning point, with the future of O Group of companies and the balance of power hanging in the balance. The grand finale of the show arrived with a blend of breathtaking elements. The makeup artistry, kids' fashion, and adult clothing seamlessly intertwined, creating a visual masterpiece that held the audience in awe. The diverse mix of styles, delicate makeup, playful children's designs, and sophisticated adult wear merged into one stunning display that built up to a fabulous crescendo. The atmosphere was electric as the crowd watched in fascination, the culmination of the night's hard work and creativity unfolding before them. As the show reached its peak, Ouyang and Mia made their way to the center of the stage, drawing the full attention of the audience. The spotlight shifted onto them, the air thick with anticipation. Ouyang, his voice strong yet humble, took a moment to acknowledge Mia's vital contribution to the evening's success. "This event wouldn't have been possible without her expertise," he said, gesturing to Mia. "She is the heart of our makeup artistry team, and her dedication has made this all come to life." The crowd erupted into applause, recognizing the efforts of both Ouyang and Mia. The fashion show concluded on an unforgettable high note, the audience's cheers echoing through the venue as the final looks graced the runway. The applause seemed to linger in the air long after the lights dimmed, a testament to the flawless execution of the event. Chairman Ao, who had been watching the event with keen interest from the sidelines, was clearly impressed by his son's performance. As the last model left the stage, Chairman Ao approached Ouyang, his expression one of approval. After a private conversation with Ouyang and several other business officials, the discussion centered around the flawless execution of the event. The officials praised Ouyang's leadership, applauding his efficiency in managing every detail and ensuring everything ran smoothly. "Your ability to handle such a large-scale production with such precision," one of the business leaders remarked, "is a clear indication of your capabilities as a leader. You've exceeded all expectations tonight." Ouyang nodded graciously, his mind already shifting to the next phase of his plans. Meanwhile, the energy from the event was still palpable, with many feeling that this was just the beginning for him. But as the night continued, an unexpected disruption threatened to overshadow the success of the event. Mr. Lee's sister arrived at the venue unannounced. Her presence was a stark contrast to the celebratory atmosphere. Her demeanor was rude and confrontational, and she quickly zeroed in on Maya and Andy's girlfriend. Without warning, a heated argument erupted between the three women, escalating rapidly as they exchanged harsh words. Tensions soared, and what began as a verbal confrontation quickly spiraled into a violent altercation. The crowd, sensing an opportunity for drama, whipped out their phones, eager to record the chaos unfolding before them. The situation intensified as the noise grew louder, and the scene became a spectacle for all to see. In the midst of the mayhem, the backdrop banner suspended above the stage came crashing down, landing directly on Mia. A protective instinct surged within Ouyang, who rushed to shield her, followed closely by Chen Ji. In the frantic moments that followed, both men sustained injuries as they tried to prevent the banner from causing any harm. The commotion was deafening, and a chaotic rush ensued, with staff and security scrambling to contain the situation. With the situation spiraling out of control, Ouyang and Chen Ji were quickly escorted to the hospital. The urgency of the moment cast a shadow over the otherwise successful evening, but the focus was now on the well-being of the two men. Mr. Lai, furious with his sister for causing such a scene, was livid and scolded her harshly, her disruptive behavior threatening to undo all the progress made that night. Meanwhile, Ouyang's mother chastised Mia for getting involved in the conflict, her frustration evident as she scolded her daughter-in-law-to-be. Despite the chaos, the dust began to settle and the event's aftermath was still being assessed. Later that evening, a board meeting was called at U Group of Companies. As the meeting unfolded, Chairman Uo addressed the events of the night, his demeanor surprisingly calm considering the earlier drama. To our surprise, despite the earlier incident, the chairman began, "The event has been a resounding success. We've seen a 7% increase in profits compared to last year's event, a clear indication that the hard work has paid off." His tone was one of satisfaction, though the lingering tension from the altercation was still felt in the room. The chairman went on to praise Ouyang, acknowledging his leadership and managerial prowess. Ouyang demonstrated exceptional leadership tonight. His vision and execution were flawless. He's proven that he is ready to take the next step in leading the company. As the meeting continued, an unexpected twist emerged. The viral video of the altercation between the women, which had spread rapidly across social media, had inadvertently worked in their favor. The controversy had generated buzz, drawing even more attention to the event. The increased visibility from the viral video had created a buzz on social media, contributing to a significant rise in the brand's marketing impact. It was a strange turn of events, but in the world of business, even bad publicity could be turned into an opportunity. With the profits up and the brand's visibility higher than ever, it was clear that the night, despite the chaos, had ended with a clear victory. Ouyang's leadership had not only proven his capabilities but also positioned him for greater influence in the company's future. The show had ended on a high note, but the real challenge was just beginning. With this, we end this part. Kindly like this video and subscribe to watch the next part.